Okay, moment of truth should be going live. Let's check YouTube. We are live. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We will give everyone a few minutes to join before we kick off. Thanks for joining. Drop a hello in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're from. And we will kick off in a couple of minutes.
I feel like I didn't get the layered white t-shirt memo today. Look at this.
We've gone, Jason, from like always wearing the same thing, so we've fallen out of sync recently.
It's wild. Not too
We
late for an
definitely-
outfit change, Jason. Not too late. You can,
That would involve me owning something that's not a black t-shirt, which doesn't happen too often.
Same.
Okay, great. We have got people joining. Welcome, everyone. Drop a hello in the chat. We'd love to know where you're from, what company you're at, what your role is. Let us know. Let us know what you're excited to learn today. It's our first episode with a guest, so we're very excited. And we will kick off in 60 seconds. Tyler Nell in the chat. Good to see some PromptMates here. Okay, we're ticked over 100. Let's get going. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. This is PromptMates Live free. If it's your first PromptMates Live, we're running these every other week at the moment, trying to deliver live practical content to anyone in recruiting, talent acquisition, to learn about AI, automation, and the new tooling. I'm Joe, one of the hosts. I'm also a director of AI at a company called Seed. And we have Jason, who's head of people intelligence and AI at Natera. Is that the right title, Jason?
Yeah, that's this week's at least.
And we have our first guest who will intro very soon, but Viet is here and we're really excited to have him. We've got Metaview supporting the show once again, and I'll hand over to Sile in a moment. It's been 2 weeks since we heard from Metaview, so obviously they have a ton of new features which they've rolled out to tell us about, and then we'll get into the session. We have about 50 minutes on no-code apps, and we have Viet who works for a no-code app, and we're going to be talking about building your own recruiting apps, which is kind of taking things a step further from the first couple of sessions where we were looking at building on large language models like ChatGPT. So let's hand over to you, Sile. We're excited to see some new features, teach us about AI and what you've been building over at Metaview in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for running this, Joe, Jason. As I was mentioning, sort of feels like a great community that you're bringing together, and we're pumped to be supporting it. So yeah, thank you for making this happen. So yeah, in case you don't sort of know, I'm Sile. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO at a company called Metaview. Metaview is an AI company focused on recruiting. And the thing I want to talk about that I think maybe folks on this call will be most excited about and would definitely recommend you take for a spin after the show, after the pod, is our new AI sourcing agent. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but TLDR, we built the first truly autonomous AI sourcing agent. What we mean by autonomous is it sort of thinks for itself about how to go and find the best people on the internet, as opposed to just being using AI to turn your pros into a set of filters. It actually goes through and runs different searching strategies. And that really changes how sourcing gets done. And we're hearing a ton of really great feedback on it. In the last 2 weeks, we've shipped some really awesome functionality. I just want to show you some of those things. So I'm going to jump into Metaview now. And actually, I'm not in the sourcing part of Metaview. I'm in the sort of the core Metaview product, which is this AI note taker that we have. So it's a note taker built specifically for recruiting. Now, as of a couple of weeks ago, there's now a new button that you get after every single one of your interviews, where after you speak to a candidate, you can actually tell Metaview's AI to go and find more candidates like this. And so the reason this is so magical is because you're having a conversation with candidates, you're learning things about them that no one else, out there in the sort of competitive talent market knows. And the AI can use that knowledge to go and find other people that might be just like this person. So I'm going to click on that button now. I can share some context on what I thought was great about them. In this case, I'm not going to. I'm just going to say start the search. And literally now an AI agent will spend 5 minutes out there finding me as many profiles as is reasonable that really are similar to this person that I was really impressed with. So it's this great sort of coming together of the AI is in your conversations, which means it knows things about what you're looking for better than any other AI on the planet and can therefore do a better job sourcing candidates for you. So that's new feature number 1. We'll come back to this search in a bit. New feature number 2 is a personal favorite. You can now speak to Metaview. We think a lot about Metaview's sourcing agent, sort of equivalent to some of the things, actually, I don't want to ruin Viet's demos, but there's like an element of vibe sourcing about this product as well, because you can engage with it in such a human way. And so now you can actually speak to Metaview. So I'm gonna give an example right here. Okay, I'm looking for a head of talent. We're looking to hire this person in the San Francisco Bay Area. I really want them to have seen scale from Series A all the way up to potentially Series D before, with a historic skew towards technical hiring when they were an IC. And so just the way I sort of think about the role, almost in real time, I can express that to the AI. And again, it will take that, parse that and synthesize that into a full-on understanding of all of the characteristics we might be looking for, show that back to me and ask me if I think if we're aligned here, this is what we mean, and then go and find candidates like that. In this case, we're gonna wait a couple more seconds so I can see the ideal candidate profile it builds based on my prompt. But again, the magical thing here really is I speak very naturally and I get this here, which is an ideal candidate profile, which is almost the full prompt. The AI has taken my small prompt and exploded that into a full prompt for me to give back to it so that it can go and do the search. So yeah, magical feature number 2. The third, I feel like I just referred to that one as my favorite, and now what I'm gonna say these are all my favorite. Okay, you can't have a favorite child. These are all great features. This is much more, I would argue, you should think of this as something that's really opens the window to what might be possible when you take a truly agentic approach to using AI within recruiting. What I mean by that is it's almost like having a junior co-worker. So sometimes it does a great job, sometimes it doesn't. And what I'm referring to now is Metaview's deep research mode. So I'm gonna flick over to deep research here. So rather than asking Metaview's agent to source candidates, I'm asking it to provide me with market research, recruiting market research. There's some use cases that are ready for me to sort of play with down here that I can just click on. In this case, I'm actually gonna copy in a previous prompt. The reason I'm doing this is because for this almost more junior coworker, this researcher, the prompt is actually really important. So we're better than PromptMates to explain the importance of having a great prompt. But essentially what I'm getting it to do here is to just map what the competition looks like for product engineers between London and San Francisco. That's where we're hiring product engineers. We're really scaling, especially sort of making, frankly, quite aggressive plans for next year and looking to understand where we're going to put, more or less of our effort. And I want to get some just market data on how the market's looking, and I'm not asked Metaview to go and do that. Deep research does take a while, just like you'll have experienced with other products. Deep research, it's not sort of click your fingers and you get the result, but we believe it's worth the wait. What I actually get from that is, let me actually pull up the search from previously, is literally I get sets of graphs and visualizations of the talent market for that role between these two locations. So this is telling me what percentage of the talent pool is considered high mobility talent, i.e. based on their experience levels, a few metrics that it's picked out, the seniority distribution between London versus the Bay Area as well. And you can instruct it to sort of retrieve whatever data you want and graph it for you. In this case, this is how much of the talent is sourced from FANG between London versus Bay Area. So again, it's I didn't give it specifics about exactly what I want, so it's used its own intelligence to decide what might be useful competitive intel, but I can really get it to be specific, and it has various tools to chart and display this data back to me. So I can just be more informed as a recruiter, but also I can have better conversations with my team. So yeah, 3 new features, excited about every single one, but I think the overriding theme for us is, when you take this agentic approach, once you're live with the agent, suddenly there's an explosion of things that you can do, because these LLMs are just so damn powerful that actually sort of going from where we were even just 2 weeks ago to where we are now from a feature completeness is it's pretty insane. And that's it. Oh, and I should say, I'm so bad at this. I'm so not a CEO hustler. By the way, you should head over to Metaview.ai. We have during November, for every sourcing agent that you buy, so for every seat of the sourcing agent that you buy, we'll double it. So definitely a really good time to get started with the product. It's already awesome, got great feedback, but it's also getting better literally every day. So now's a great time to buy.
Very cool. Just remember to get that in at the end, Sahil. Looks amazing. Like all of the features I think are super useful, right? Did a post yesterday about how talking to AI is faster than typing. I think it's about 5 times faster. So great to see that in there. The deep research looks great. I think it's reassuring that deep research actually takes a bit of time. I don't know if that's like a bias. I feel like it's not deep enough if it comes back straight away. And Jason, we were literally before this call talking about like sourcing candidates like successful candidates we already know, right? Like about 30 minutes ago.
No, that was really cool, I have to say. I mean, I feel like I usually can guess like a lot of features that are coming out, and I've never thought of that one, dude. So you tricked me on that one. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, awesome. Well, folks, over to you. I know it's going to be an awesome session, and yeah, really, really pumped to be supporting the show. So yeah, let's make it a good one.
Awesome. Thanks, Sahil. Thanks to Metaview for the support. I can see some of the team are in the chat, so feel free to continue to fire any Metaview related questions in there. And we'll say bye to Sahil and Jason. I think you're going to intro our very first guest.
Yes, indeed. Our very first guest, Viet. I am absolutely thrilled to be introing Viet here. So as most folks here know, Joe and I have been kind of calling together a small community of folks that really want to be out ahead of this like wave of AI and assistive technology that's, we always hear is going to take over this TA world that we've all made careers out of. And Viet is one of the first people that we ever had the luck to bump into. He's got a really interesting mix of both large company experience coming from the likes of Netflix, and then more recently in kind of a hypergrowth world at Vercel. But the thing that really, really impressed me at first with Viet was he created this tool called Dev Scout. And Dev Scout is, I don't want to get too into it. I would recommend going and checking it out and playing around with it. But long story short, it's for all intents and purposes a sourcing tool that allows you to source within GitHub. And as a guy who built and ran, recruiting teams in open source worlds for multiple different companies, like being able to source in GitHub was this like holy grail for us. But no engineer ever made it because that was the engineer clubhouse. They're not going to go ahead and make a tool so that you can go in and like find them where they're in their clubhouse. And what it did was it took a recruiter to kind of kick the door of that clubhouse in and create a tool to make it better for the company he was at. And then by extension, the rest of us. And I think that really signifies for me kind of the way I look at the future of kind of where we're heading. Then jump forward to today. You guys hear a lot about vibe coding. The first 2 sessions were to make everybody feel comfortable about like how to use ChatGPT or how to use Gemini. Vibe coding is one of those words that gets thrown around. It can be kind of intimidating. And what I like to say is it doesn't need to be intimidating anymore. Like the 3 people that you're looking at on the screen right now, none of us have CS degrees. Like, I make a joke that back in the day, in order if you wanted to be a professional musician, you had to like study at a conservatory and hope that one day somebody would retire or die from a symphony and then you would get to take that person's place. And then, punk rock hits, hip hop comes out. And what happens is you can spend an afternoon in your bedroom and learn 3 chords, or get a busted turntable and go to a party that night and you're a musician. That's what Viet is now. Like, Viet has taken that scrappiness and the understanding of his sector within talent and has turned that into being able to produce products and content that folks like us are going to use. I will say one disclaimer: what he's going to show you might look at it and be like, yo, that's way too hard. Like, I can't do that. Like, I assure you, you can. Like, so don't get intimidated. Have a little bit of fun with it. And just really, really, really thrilled to be able to kind of hand it over and have him show you what he's going to show you guys today.
Thanks, Jason. I don't know what's more awkward, having someone else talk about you or you talking about yourself, but I appreciate the intro. And so, like Jason mentioned, prior to coming to Vercel, I had never done anything around vibe coding. Frankly, a year ago, sort of the extent of my use of AI was basically using ChatGPT to and I think at the time I was barely using ChatGPT. I feel like LLMs have become just more become more of a consumer product in the last year or so. And so I think we're all learning and we're all trying to figure it out. But what Jason said that really resonated is, throughout my entire career, I've always sort of wanted to build these things, but was often hindered by my own technical ability, or 2, not having the engineering resources, or 3, waiting for a vendor to build it, and they just never do. And so I think with this new world of vibe coding and sort of being able to sort of no code solutions, allows users like me and you to figure out how we can build these things. And so this is going to be a live workshop. With any sort of live demo and live workshop, who knows what can happen. So we're going to just run with it. So before I jump in, I think one of the things I've learned over the last few months, as I've started to build sort of more of our internal tools, is being really clear about what exactly you're trying to build, and being really clear about the thing you're building, what problem does it solve. And so I can tell you, I've built probably half a dozen things that were more science experiments and things I was curious about, and just had to prototype it. And it fundamentally didn't solve any of our business problems. And so it didn't really go anywhere. And so as I've sort of went through those motions of building things that weren't then used, and then got me to think about, okay, how do I build things that are actually adopted, that actually will be used? And so I think I'll sort of share sort of my learning, so you don't have to go through the same pain, is as you're starting to build these agentic workflows or building these different features, it needs to fit into the existing way that people work. While it can't be something new, you're just going to get much more adoption if it's something that people are already doing, and what you're then building is supercharging that work. And so the use case I'm going to go through today is building sort of call it interactive offer. And so all of us in recruiting, we've all have called candidates, walked them through the offer, walked them through things like their cash compensation, their equity, like what the role is, and sort of benefits and all that other stuff, right? So, and then I think at some point somebody decided, hey, let's actually put this into a PowerPoint deck, and actually let's make this more visual for candidates. And I think, I would say even within sort of the larger cohort, probably only 10% of people are sort of building these decks, because it takes time, it takes creativity, it takes sort of good design, all these things. And so I think it's hindered a lot of us to actually even building decks. But no one's going to deny that it's a great idea to build a deck to walk a candidate through sort of all these different details. But what if I were to tell you that now you don't have to you don't have to be a designer, you don't have to build the deck? What if there was just a way for you can just build it using something like a V0? Actually, before I jump into building, so within sort of the vibe coding sort of world, there's a handful of different tools, right? So I work at Vercel, we build V0, so naturally I use V0 all the time. The thing I like about sort of Vercel and V0 is that I can both build and also deploy sort of this app. Whereas I think I'm not as familiar with Replit and I think a few other ones, Lovable. I'm not as familiar, and I'm not sure sort of how far you can take it from build to deployment, but I will say that V0 has been really nice to be able to build something and then be able to deploy it and then monitor it and all this other stuff. So, all right. So without further ado, I'm gonna start building stuff. So again, this screen looks familiar. I think a lot of like platforms are starting to look like this. I mean, Metaview's UI looks like this, and V0 does as
I don't
well.
think we can see your screen yet.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for calling that out. And also, I've asked Jason to hold me accountable. Like, I think sometimes I throw around terms that to me are sort of common terms because I've sort of been living in this world for a little while. And so if there's anything I say that is like, oh, what does that word mean? I asked Jason just to call me out and make me explain it. So, all right, let me go ahead and share my screen.
Actually, that's actually a funny thing because usually Joe keeps me honest. So while we're doing this, we're here for everybody. If there's any words or terms you guys hear a lot in AI, this is a safe space. Like, drop them in, and we'll have plenty of time to kind of tell you what they mean and stuff like that.
Cool. All right. And so, the other thing, so what Silas showed, like when you're sort of like, you put in a prompt, you press enter, it runs, it does deep research, like sort of, we're going to go through a very similar experience. And so as I'm like sort of building, and there's going to be pauses where it's actually the system's building for me, Jason's going to ask a bunch of questions, sort of like dig deeper into different areas. But as I've had to build stuff on my own, not in this setting, I find that I have to work on two things at once. I work on sort of whatever I'm building and then working on something else on the side while like sort of these things are building. So just a pro tip there. All right, so I've already kind of built my initial prompt. So I want to build an interactive offer letter.
Let's have you zoom in just a little bit, by the way.
Yeah, got
Thank
you. Is that good? We good?
Yeah, that works.
Cool. All right. So I want to build an interactive offer. This offer letter needs the following sections. So in the first tab, I just want welcome to Vercel, what the role is, like what your first 30 days look like, and sort of meet your team. In the second tab, I want to go into compensation. So it covers base salary, RSUs, and then just a graph that shows how your compensation could look like if the valuation were to 2x, 5x, 10x, 25x. And then a third tab, which is benefits. I asked it, this is a demo, so feel free to add mock data and information. Great. So the initial build always takes a little, like the longest. I would say it probably takes anywhere between, I don't know, like three to 5 minutes maybe. But it's sort of generating. And one thing that like as I've started vibe coding, the thing that's been most helpful for me, frankly, is actually reading what it's doing. And so it'll basically like walk through, okay, how is it interpreting what you're building? It's starting to build your CSS file and sort of all these other things. And so I'll sort of share a little more about sort of the sidebar in a second, but I've already sort of let this generate, so we don't have to wait. And what this would generate is actually what we're going to see on this tab. So let me go ahead and refresh this.
So one of the things I like about some of the no-code stuff is, you guys notice this, it doesn't look that much different than when you're using a ChatGPT or when you're using a Gemini. So if you've had experience running with those things, interacting with this newer kind of vibe coding type product feels very, very similar. Would you say so, Viet?
Yeah, I mean, it takes some getting used to, but it is a lot of just like to your point with ChatGPT, you're kind of going back and forth, right? Like you prompt one thing, it returns another, you read it, you interpret it, is it the right thing? And then sort of you continue to iterate on it. And so I'm sure I could probably do a whole session around like prompt engineering and sort of how to sort of get to like the right thing and what's the right level of detail. But that's sort of probably a conversation for another day. Okay, so based on sort of what the original prompt I put in, so you'll see sort of like this is what generated. So welcome to Vercel. It has its offer details where it talks through, again, your role, your first 30 days, meet your team, and then also generated this compensation tab, again, which is like base salary, RSUs, and then it shows these 4 lines and goes through sort of all these other details, and then it made up a bunch of benefits. So I think the first thing I want to do is, as I look at this, is like not everyone works for Vercel. So I was like, you know what? Let's actually try something different. Let's say this offer was for restoration hardware. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a screenshot of this. I don't know if you can see my screenshot, but take a screenshot of this, plug this in, And this is my point around like, you don't need to be a designer. And so I'm gonna like, redesign the UI to match the theme of the screenshot. What else? Match, oh my God, color and typeface, and make this an offer. Let's do West Elm, actually. Spend far too much time at furniture stores lately, clearly. Don't change the role or comp, just change the header to say West Elm. Great. All right, so now it's running. Like it's pretty cool like that. It sort of like takes screenshots, interpret like what's in the screenshot, and then sort of use that as part of its directions. Again, it's thinking, it's gonna take a second, and then again it walks. It sort of that again, like I said, the thing I really like is that it sort of explains sort of what it's interpreting. So user provides screenshots showing luxury interior design, warm tones, et cetera, et cetera. And then yeah, it just like will keep like sort of sharing what it's thinking. And for me, like the reason why I read it is because it helps me understand, okay, like how does it interpret what I'm saying? How can I, and when it does something wrong, it's largely because either one, I didn't do a good enough job explaining what I wanted. And by reading it, it helps me understand what it thought I meant. And so that allows me to then iterate on sort of how I'm prompting.
So what happens when you run into roadblocks like that? Like, I mean, you're sitting there, you're by yourself, you don't have a team of engineers, you know, sitting next to you in your cube. Like, what do you do at that point?
It really depends on sort of the complexity of sort of the roadblock I'm running into. Like with this, right? Like this is like very UI. It's a UI change, and so it's not a big deal. Where I'll just like continue iterating on it, and sort of updating my prompt to get to the point where it's like I see what I want to see. When it's like a functionality roadblock, that's a little bit harder. And so hypothetically, like we won't go into it today, but because all of this, all the content we're looking at is all statically generated. So that means I'm like manually entering this information. It's not pulling information from somewhere else to then load it in. And so in the case, like let's say if it's dynamically loading from your offer form from Greenhouse or whatever ATS you use, if it's like, okay, well, if I'm trying to like tap this API or tap Greenhouse to like, hey, give me this information and it's not working, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll go into ChatGPT and like, hey, or actually I'll either use V0 to like, hey, this isn't working, help me understand why. And V0 actually does a pretty good job of contextualizing what's happening. You can also then create, like I'll show in a second, but yeah, this console log that basically shows like when there's errors. And so it can read the errors and tell you like, hey, this is why it's not working. Sometimes I find like it's a little slow, like in terms of like the back and forth. And so sometimes I'll actually jump over to ChatGPT because we have enterprise version. I'll then be like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. This is what's happening. How do I solve for this? And ChatGPT oftentimes will like give me answers faster, but then I still need to translate that over to V0 of like, hey, this is what I need you to do. And so it's there's, depending on the problem, there's a maybe slightly different solution. But in any case, hopefully that answers your question. So now this is loaded. Yeah. We can see it's West Elm, and it feels, I mean, it feels like this more than it did previously when it was just black and white. And so it's like one of the things that you may do. And again, I'll happy to share this template and sort of share all these prompts with folks on the call. And you effectively now be like, okay, well, if I work at Sierra, or I work at Anthropic, or I work at Natera, like you effectively can take your company's website, take a screenshot of it. Hey, this is our style guide. Now build me this thing. At Vercel, I've built enough at Vercel to then now I have like a prompt that says, this is our style guide. These are our colors. And it gives me hex codes and all these other things. So I can get exactly how I want it. And so over time, as you start to build more of these things in these vibe coding platforms, like having sort of your style guide on your clipboard is like super helpful. All right, so let me jump into like, okay, as I'm doing this, like, what are some of the things I want to change? Let's first, I don't know what I just did. Okay. Okay, so first and foremost, I don't know, I feel like 2x, 5x, 10x, 15x is fine, but like actually I'd rather I want to be able to enter my own. And so I'm going to actually add another prompt. So So allow the user to enter in a custom valuation multiple. When they enter in the custom multiple, it should update the chart and also blur all other lines to highlight the custom multiple.
So pause right there, and just like what I want people to see though is, do you see how like he's being as prescriptive as he can be to be able to direct it? So this goes back to that idea that like Vercel is not a magic wand, just like ChatGPT and Claude are not magic wands. They are tools that you use. So what Viet's doing is like being extremely descriptive as to what he wants out of, the Vercel tool. I also find it interesting that you choose to make sure you spell correctly, because like as Joe can attest when he sees me do this stuff, like I stopped caring about how I spell a long time ago.
Same, dude. I'm like the if you read the prompts I put in, like, and the sort of the amount of typos I have, it's like it's almost like I don't know how V0 is understanding what I'm saying sometimes. But actually, so I'm looking at the chat. So absolutely, I think before I jump into building, a lot of times I'll actually start to jot down exactly what I'm trying to accomplish, and trying to think about, okay, what is the end user experience, and then working backwards. But sometimes like you don't really know exactly where you're trying to land, and so you sort of build like a V1, and then you have these reactions of like, okay, these are things I like, these are things I don't like, and then you sort of update your backlog of things you want to do. And so this is like a relatively small project, but like as you start to build bigger and bigger projects, planning becomes like exponentially more important. So I'm going to actually press enter, and I probably should have pressed enter while this is going. But to Jason's point, you have to be the more prescriptive you are, the sort of the closer what V0 produces is going to be closer to like sort of what you're asking. Whereas if you give it like something really generic, it kind of will fill in the blanks for you, and it may be the thing you're looking for, it may not be. I've been actually genuinely impressed that it usually gets it right, or sort of is able to sort of incept my thoughts and like, okay, this is like what you're trying to do, so let me go ahead and like do it for you. And so that's been really nice. But as sort of this is running, I'm curious, I'm like kind of look through this, like what else do I want to do? So one thing that I will typically do in an offer call is like, well, sometimes I'll share feedback with a candidate I'll share feedback with a candidate like where they did well, and also sort of what the team thought about them. So I'm actually going to go ahead and queue this up while it's running. Add a hero section and offer details that shares quotes and from the team on how the candidate did in their interview and why they're excited for them to join. I want this to be all right. So let's see. This is carousel. How do you spell carousel? Carousel. I don't know. And carousel is just like the thing that sort of like rotates, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and just queue that up. And so now going back to this, right? So now we have this custom multiple. It's like, okay, let's call it 1,000x. Okay, see, I don't know, like, so let's do 50x, even 50x. Like now, like actually by not constraining this graph or giving any instructions on how to handle like sort of capping it, this is like really ugly. And also as I'm hovering over this, like what is like 2,680K, like that doesn't even make sense. And so, okay, there's some things we need to change. One is we need to make sure like this graph continues to dynamically scale with sort of the valuation. Then two is I don't like this like whole 1,000 situation. I actually would rather it smartly convert to millions. And so I'm gonna go ahead and queue that up. Actually, we should cap the multiple. Cap the multiple at, I don't know, call it 100x. The chart below needs to dynamically scale as the multiple gets bigger so it doesn't bleed. I don't know, I think that's what that means. And then what was the other thing we said? We said something, smartly
it to be in,
convert
yeah,
thousands
millions, yeah.
to millions where approps. Cool. All right, so nice timing. Okay, so we basically ran that. Now it has this carousel. Cool. So now we see like Sarah, the CEO, said their technically depth has really impressed me, blah, blah, blah. And so it just keeps going. And you could see like how like if you send this to, if you get on a call with a candidate and on that call you send them this link or you sort of like share it over Zoom and you walk through it and they have this as their takeaway, this is exponentially more impressive than like me jumping on a call and then have to follow up with email, right? So
Yeah.
and so yeah,
And I will add to that too really quick, guys. Like as this compiles and Viet kind of shows you all the things we can add to it. Like imagine if a tool vendor came to you and was like, yo, I'm gonna make your offer letters better. And you were watching this demo, you would be impressed right now. You'd be like, damn, how much is it gonna cost me? Like I have no budget and this is gonna cost me a lot of money. And you have to remember, like, this is DIY for all intents and purposes, you know? This isn't even something, and I know like, you know, that you could do this to where you could send it out to people and they could mess with it themselves. Or this could even just be like an internal enablement thing that like your recruiters have this. And to your point, you're sharing your screen and you're walking through this. And that's where I love to kind of shift people's mindset is like, Viet is not selling you an offer letter generation product. He is helping you understand that you can actually build something to enable your teams so that the offer making process is unlike anything else out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so so as I've thought about sort of how does AI impact sort of the world of sort of TA as it stands today, and I think as I've talked to different people leaders, I've heard sort of a few different things. Either one is like our AI strategy is telling our recruiters to use ChatGPT to make themselves more productive, and sort of that's like sort of the first strategy. Second strategy is let's go buy tools like Metaview, and that becomes our AI strategy. There are very few teams that are out there actually building these sort of custom tools, and even if they do, right, I don't think that even if you were to sort of apply all three of those strategies, we're still at least a few years where like AI, not even a few years, I would say probably a year, where like I think AI can truly bend the headcount curve, meaning like you can hire one less person because now you're sort of building all these AI features. Yeah, at least that's my opinion. I think we're probably a year out from that. But what it is doing now is actually it's cutting down on sort of SaaS spend or sort of like software spend. And so to Jason's point, you know, this is a feature you would think like Greenhouse or any other ATSs would just have, right? But they don't. Like it's not a priority for them for one reason or another. And so in the short term, it allows us to like go and build these things and sort of be able to use them for ourselves. And I mean, also there's a world where like I would love to open source this, right? Like, hey, how do I build this thing that now, you know, Jason and Datera can sort of use this, or any of you sort of in chat can just take this and run with it. And so I think there is a world where like, you know, open source software has been sort of relevant within engineering for, I don't know, the last like 2-3 decades, maybe more. But like there is also a world now that like recruiters are starting to build stuff. Like, why aren't we open sourcing these things? Knowing that to save everyone else time and sort of add value to the community. And so it's something that me and Jason, I'm sure, will continue to talk about, and like how do we open source these type of things. Okay, so what do we do? I don't remember. Okay, so now we have this, and so let's try this again. Let's see if I put 100, what happens? Nice. Okay, so first it changed to millions, which is dope. And it caps it at 100, I think. So what if I do 200? What happens? Okay, it won't let me. Nice. So if I do 90, okay, cool. So it went from 2 million to 9.5. So it's scaling properly. This is a small thing, which I'm not going to try to fix right now, which is like, actually, I take that back. I am going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screenshot this. I don't know, the y-axis label is running into other labels. Also, why I asked it questions, like why is the graph a different color theme than the rest of the page? Fix that. All right. Actually, so while this is going, I realized actually we're getting through this a little faster than I thought, which I'm excited about because I can do more. So what I'm going to do is create a form that that allows the user to enter in title, base salary, RSUs, interviewer feedback. Use this info to dynamically create this offer page.
All right, and then we're gonna cap it at another 5 minutes because our questions are backing up, and I want to give you your time.
Okay, cool.
Address all your fans. Is this something that you're going to be able to share out afterwards with everybody, so they can even like pretend they were getting a job at West Elm working for Viet and mess around with?
Yeah, so I can. So I'll as we're sort of going through the questions, I'll deploy it and then I can share it out, and people can like mess around with it, also separately. And this is like one of those. This is like very much like a experience people run into. It's like I hate that this is linear. Like growth, like this growth should not be linear. It should be exponential. And so that's something that sort of I would fix. And so again, like as you're building stuff, you have these different ideas and you sort of like start working on it.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you questions now. So we had one come in about like what happens if you do something you don't like. So like if you commit a change and you dislike it, do you recommend restoring to a prior version, or do you just continue prompting to kind of like go back over what you didn't like?
Dude, it's both. I mean, the answer is both. I think I'll try to prompt my way out of it and see how far it goes. But over time, it starts to become like more and more confused. And I'm like, no, dude, this is like not a good. I usually let it go on for a little longer than it should. But effectively, what's really nice is within V0, you can then actually go back and look at previous versions, and you can also restore previous versions. So for example, like while I was running, I can restore. Let's go all the way back. I don't remember. Yeah, so this is like what it originally looked like. If I wanted to, I can then restore this, or I could also fork it. So fork being like I basically can make a copy of this version into like a sort of another arm and then start working on that preserves this. And so oftentimes like what I'll do is if I got to like the app to a really good place, but I want to add this new feature. Like for example, I probably should have forked it when I started creating this like form feature before I did it. So it preserves like, you know, this great offer page that we've already created. Right.
So just let's really make sure we understand what forking is. So you've taken it all this way. So you're on step 7 of 10, if you will, right? And you decide that you want to go ahead and add a new feature. When you fork it, you in essence are duplicating 1 through 7 someplace else and then taking it further.
Exactly. Yeah. It preserves 1 through 7. It preserves 1 through 7 and sort of call it fork A, and then allows you to work on fork B and sort of implement sort of whatever feature you want. And then you can decide like, okay, this is great. And your users can still use like sort of step 1 through 7, and that's still live. And then it allows you to sort of then work step 8 through 50 or whatever. I don't know. But yeah.
So Avengers, or like Marvel fans, it's kind of the universal timeline and how it forks off.
Yeah, sure. Sure, dude.
Okay, so we're also getting questions. Can you create a custom AI to allow the output to be consistent? So I'm assuming what that means is like, could this become a template, and then every single time you get a new hire, you just put in their information and you got a new kind of offer letter for them?
Yeah, I think the links to the next question is right, which is like, what do we do? Like we spent half an hour making something which looks awesome, which I think is relatively quick. But if you had to do that for every candidate, that would probably become a bit of an issue, right? Like how do we get this from something which we spend more time debugging and build once, and then how does it scale from here?
Dude, does this work? Honestly, I didn't think we'd get here, but I want to see if this actually works. Let's do design. Let's change to 7, and then let's do Sarah, Mike. I don't know. And they are the design person. If I do this, will it actually? Sometimes, like, if it works right away, it's okay. It did not do it. I don't think. No, it didn't do it. Okay, so well, it kind of did. So clearly it didn't work, right? And so it created the form, which is great, but it's not generating the offer. And so that's sort of the next step. It's like one of those things where it's like, okay, I know what the issue is, and sort of now how do I like go back and debug it? And I'll probably read through this to figure out like, okay, what is it doing? What's it not doing? And how do I then sort of get to do what I want it to do? But yeah, let's keep going through questions, Jason.
So this would be the answer then to that question is like, if you're making this, what you would do first. So let's imagine you have a team and you're the talent enablement person, the talent engineer, whichever new. That's one thing about recruiting. We get a new job title every 3 years. It feels like I've been a partner and I've done everything. But what I would do if I think what Viet would do is like, you would basically create this, what you're looking at, form that then you could hand off to your recruiting team, and then they would just plug in the necessary stuff, and it would kick out the offer letter that could be deployed. Like the intention is not that an individual person has to do all the half-hour work that Viet has done every single time there's a new hire.
Yeah, that's right. And so, yeah, that's exactly right. So I would send the form, and then when you press the form, it sort of generates a new offer letter. That offer letter then can be password protected by sort of a given candidate or recruiter, and then sort of that candidate only has access to sort of their particular offer. And so the one thing I do appreciate about Vercel is like we care deeply about security, and so sort of being able to password protect and secure the things you're building is incredibly important, because you wouldn't want necessarily like somebody to like be able to look at every single person's offer that's public on the internet. And so it is quite sensitive when it comes to like offers and such. And so it is something you have to seriously consider as you're building this. And so right now this is all local, but yeah.
Yeah. And then also too, okay, so offer letter is an exceptionally cool use case. I'm trying to think if you've had any other ones. I'll tell you one that I did very, very recently. We have a role that we hire a lot at Natera that has a typing requirement. And what we were doing is we were having people go and like take a typing test on like the number you type in typing test, like the #1 typing test or whatever on Google. And they had to screenshot their time and their accuracy and then submit that as part of their interview process. So what we did was we actually created a typing test for Natera where it was similar types words, like, kind of like more medical diagnostic slanted words that they had to type. And they got 2 chances at it. So there wasn't like you could have your friend come type. I guess you could still have your friend, but like, you didn't get to like know the paragraph and guess it and get really good at it. And that is now in production, and we use that for that world. So like when I talk about paper cuts and little solutions, I want to shout out Viet again about the like go to the offer letter. The offer letter is one of these things that like really hasn't changed that much since we started doing it. And I would urge everybody on the call to like think of some of these things that you could do just a little bit of a nudge to and make it as dynamic and different as this. And it pays like, it's the 1% shift. You do a 1% here and then it's a 30% shift down the line. How do you run these solutions past legal compliance prior to going live with actual candidates? Well, how did you want to pick that one yet, or I can give mine?
Yeah. So, we fortunately, because we're I would say sort of open source, like for the community, like let's just like build stuff that's helpful. Oftentimes our legal team they're less of blockers, and they're like, how do we help enable you to do this work that you want to do? And so they give us like some sort of guardrails, and even so, like those guardrails, like they'll help us through like, hey, we really want to do this thing, but you're saying we can't, like how do we get around this? And so I think working with your legal team and sort of sharing early and often what you're trying to build, first build a prototype, give them sort of something to react to, and then sort of work through with them. But it's like any other partnership with legal, is like hopefully your legal team is collaborative and wants to help. But I would say like, yeah, I would say collaborate with your legal team early and often if you think what you're building might have sort of legal implications. Another thing too is so even like storing information. So with GDPR, especially, there's a lot of folks here in Europe with GDPR, how you store information, what you store is super important. And when you buy a tool like a greenhouse or whatever product, it goes through procurement or it goes through some sort of legal review, and they'll flag like, hey, like this can't be stored here, here, and here. You have to sort of treat your internal tools you're building in the same way as like you should go through some lightweight procurement process to make sure that the technical details are they're okay with. And actually, when I was building DevScout, a team asked me, it's like, hey, can you give me like your security documentation? And I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't know how to build like a security doc. And so I went into vSphere. I was like, build me a security, build me a page that explains how this is built for security review. And so he'll do it, and it builds it. And that's literally how I this is like basically I built it and I shared with the company. They're like, this is great. And I was like, cool. I'm glad. We had a question around how do you integrate those other systems? And so it's not hard. I mean, it's hard in the sense that you have to understand, okay, how do I go and get, if I use Greenhouse as an example, how do I go and get my Harvest API generated into this? And it's super easy. So you go into your environment variables.
What's an API? I forgot. What's an API stand for?
API is sort of, to put it simply, is like, it is a pipe that goes in between your application and what other application, sort of to pipe data from one system to another. And sort of an API can be one directional, it can be bi-directional. And so I can write to the other system, or I can only receive information from the other system, but it allows me to, like, in this use case, if a recruiter puts in their offer letter details in the offer workflow in Greenhouse, I can then use the API to grab the information into my app to then generate sort of this custom offer letter. So, and sort of how you do it in vSphere is super simple. You literally just put Greenhouse, and then you go into Greenhouse, and it'll give you some like serialized number, and you add in here, and then you add it. And now, like, these two apps they're effectively keys, right? So like now my app has a key to Greenhouse, and now I can actually go get the information.
You want to cover this one, Viet? How can we put parameters into our prompts so that the solution is more compliant?
So at the very top, right? If I wanted to, I could go to the very top, and my very first prompt say, hey, I live in Germany. These are sort of like, and actually I live in Germany, give them a link of like, here is how I am allowed and not allowed to store information. If I try to do something that is against sort of this sort of GDPR, sort of however Berlin thinks about employment laws, or Germany thinks about employment laws, tell me that I'm sort of I'm gonna get in trouble. And actually, it will do that. It'll monitor it for you. You can like set rules, if you will. And so, what I was saying earlier is now it's like, okay, great. It just built this for me, right? So like, here's a tech stack, here's security considerations, here's the architecture, here's the data flow. I could not in a million years write this myself. So like, it's cool that it's like, it knows what sort of security docs typically look like. It knows how it was built, obviously, because it built it. But again, never in a million years I could have built this and share this with a company. So.
Nice, very cool.
I love that idea though, like the personalized outreach one. That's really cool. Like, imagine that like an executive recruiting. Like, imagine if you had, a page about just why XYZ GM or this individual, like, VP would be so impactful at our particular company. Now, once again, you got to build a template, then you got to have a place to throw their resume or LinkedIn profile, and then maybe the job description. But I think I might steal that idea. I quite like that idea, Tamara.
I mean, Jason, you and I have talked a lot about sort of Clay and sort of these data enrichment tools, which I know is a bit off topic here, but just like imagine, and actually I'm starting to cook on how I would actually build this. Imagine a world where like you have like sort of a candidate in a single line, and sort of in each column you have like things like their Twitter feed or whatever it is. And so whenever, like, for example, if I put like an engineer and I have like, I'm pulling in their Twitter feed, like whenever they talk about Vercel, immediately message them, because Vercel's top of mind right now, assuming it's, and I even say like, if it's a positive sentiment, message them, be like, hey, we saw that you're talking about Vercel, would love to chat with you about a role here. Like, we're now in a world where this is fully possible. It takes time to build, and it takes time to think through like what that could look like. But no longer are the days where we are waiting for an engineer to help us build these things. And I think that's really the point of the session, right? It's like, how do we start to build things we want and sort of things that we can build for us by us.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what it comes down to is like, the other thing I love to say is like, I only have one customer. Like I gotta make Natera better. I don't, and God bless all the ATSs of the world and stuff like that. I got no interest in being an ATS, but it's like you have so many masters at that point, and you make one little tweak, you piss off 34 other people, sort of thing. Like we get to live in this world to which like we have to create for our own individualized world. Viet, genuinely, truly, thank you. Like, I think you got I mean, I'm just getting like LinkedIn's right now, people having like mind blown emojis and stuff like that. So like, very, very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of, V0 is free. I think you get like some amount of credits for free. I'm going to drop my code in here, which will actually give you additional credits. I think Jason and Joe will follow up with sort of that link too. And so this should give you some more credits to play with it. But I encourage you to just go in there and like build something. Like one of the exercises we did as a recruiting team was, it was during an offsite. We're like, hey, everyone go into V0 and build a fan page for your favorite music artist. And maybe the music artist that like no one would ever think that you would like. Like I think I built mine for Bass Hunter, which I'm sure the Europeans can appreciate, but like no one else cares. But I built it, and then somebody made one for E40, another person made one for Britney Spears, and it was just like it was a fun way to actually just get people up and running and actually starting to build stuff. And you can very quickly see like, oh wow, this thing, it unlocks sort of a part of your imagination, like, oh, what could I build? So hopefully, I think if nothing else in the session, I hope that it sort of inspires everyone to just like understand, okay, there's so many things we could build, like what's possible, what's not possible, and hopefully this opens up the doors to like understand like what is possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. These apps I actually think are maybe the most fun category. Like you can have an idea in your head and you can just make it a real thing. Like some of the challenges are then getting that to a point where you can ship it and use it. And you've shown some really good tips throughout the session on how to get it to that stage. But yeah, I think everyone should have a go, even as a team building activity, like you just said. Like give these apps a try. Why not?
Yeah. Oh, one thing actually, really quick, I just saw sort of someone said dashboard, and it sort of caught my eye. And I was like, one thing that actually, what's really nice is V0 is actually surprisingly good at data visualization. And so if you're like, hey, I need to show this table, but make it prettier, you can literally take the table as a CSV, put it into V0. It's like, hey, visualize this data for me, and it'll just do it. And so that's like sort of a very simple use case to get value out of something like V0.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Love it, Viet. Thanks so much for the session. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll send out Viet's link so you get some VO credits. We'll send out the offer for Metaview. And we have more sessions coming up. I think the next one's in just 2 weeks. So we'll send you a link for that one, different use cases, more guests coming. So yeah, the sessions keep coming. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a good day in the US and have a good evening in the UK.